I'm the Research and Policy Director at the Global Development and Environment Institute at Tufts University, and I'm here with Amit Bhaduri, one of this year's Leontief Prize winners. The Leontief Prize for Advancing the Frontiers of Economic Thought is being awarded this year to Diane Elson and Amit Bhaduri for their work on the theme of development and equity. So we're here to talk with Amit about some of his work on that theme. I know that development and equity is absolutely near and dear to your heart and to your life's work in development economics and related fields. I'm wondering what you would say is the relationship between development and equity. I know you've always argued that they don't always go together.
Well, development is a very catch-all word. And I think, there are words like inclusive development, not so inclusive development. My interest in development economics started with certain non-usable concepts in standard economics like capital, like growth, which did not seem to make much sense when you put it in the context of a country like India, with a lot of poverty and so on. And in that context, it became almost indistinguishable, the word development from the equity. If you call it in the broader sense, equity among the castes, not only among the different economic classes, gender, region, you name it, languages. In every way, India is it is polite to call it diverse, but every diversity contains such an element of inequity that in different ways I became aware of it. My work only touches tangentially on many aspects of it, that's what motivated me and keeps me motivated.
I see, but I assume that means that the inequities of the development that India has seen are part of what motivates you. Do you think development has to be inequitable?
Well, I think what I'm increasingly seeing is in the name of development, you produce more inequity, quite deliberately to change the nature of wealth distribution, income distribution, destroy the livelihood of people. And that has really given me a great impetus to question what is called development.
Yeah, I mean, India, I was in India, I told you earlier, in November, and it was not difficult to see what many commentators have called the two Indias. Could you say something about the roots of that inequity that India experiences with such, record-setting growth rates, but continued high levels of poverty and exclusion?
Two inequities, one basic dividing line, which is very seldom mentioned, is the language. You see, if you rely on large companies and corporations for growth, almost inevitably you will have to have people who are English speaking. And that already leaves out close to 90% of the population. And this has been the really dividing line which says India and Bharat. That is, Bharat is the Hindi name of India, and this is one element. Plus, in every one of these, then there is layers of, for example, class division would be much greater if you leave out the English speaking. And if you go to the other thing, because it is much more feudal, land-based and so on. So, same with gender, same with, what we call Dalits. And the extreme case of this is the Aboriginals, the original population of India, whom we call the Adivasis.
Yeah.
And these are the areas where you see the most awful face of development. That is, you take away their land, their livelihood, everything else.
I know that you've called that one of the problems with India's concept of development is that it is essentially defined as, I think, what you've called corporate-led economic growth. What's the problem in your mind with defining economic development as corporate-led economic growth?
Well, per se, I think in this century it is relatively difficult to think of industrialization and modernization without corporations, because they have the knowledge, they have the machinery and so on. But you see what really is happening in India, the untold story of India, which is also going to be part of my lecture, is you see in a poor country you cannot give corporations sufficient amount of incentives to invest because your market is limited, your infrastructure is not as good, and India is, all said and done, is a democracy of a sort in which you do not have the efficiency of China and the infrastructure of China and so on. So corporations are at a great disadvantage. So the strategy since 1990s, which you call liberalization and you don't read in books, and I discovered it on the fields, not in any book, that basically you give the incentive, investment incentive to private corporations in terms of virtually free natural resources. And where does these free natural resources come from? By taking it away from the poorest peasants. They don't take away my house in Delhi, right? But they will take out, for every person like me living in Delhi, there are at least 50 people in the interior, in places like Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand and so on, who you will see displaced in the name of development and so on.
Yeah. My interest in when I was in India in November was looking at the National Food Security Act, and I was interested in it because it seemed to have interesting development features beyond its social welfare function of providing food to the poor, particularly the public procurement program. It seemed to me that it had the potential, at least, to be overcoming market failures in the countryside, the kind of limited markets that exist in the Indian countryside, and creating new markets for poor peasants to begin that hopefully virtuous cycle of development of building up their investment in their land with stable prices and stable markets. Do you see the positive aspects, the aspects of the National Food Security Program that are development-oriented as positive and with potential?
Unlike most typical neoclassical economists or conservative economists, I certainly do believe that in whatever way you can even give a little bit of more food to the very poor people is a good thing to do. So in that sense, I'm totally with it. But you see, you do not create a local market, and you have not created a local market if you travel in really the poorer parts of India, because I have seen them with my own eyes. You cannot create this market. You can give a better distribution, you are right, than the normal price system would do, the market-based price system would do. But you cannot give better, you cannot create, because to the demand side of this, which was supposed to be in the other program in which, with people like Jean Drèze, Aruna Roy and so on, I spent a lot of time in the beginning, provided you create purchasing power, and that was the employment guarantee scheme. And that the government should have really done much more. We would not go into this. But food security, as I said, it's a good safety net in a democracy, not only in a democracy, for very poor people. If you can give some food, it's always better than not giving food. But that's about it. I don't see anything which we can do to create purchasing power in the villages and so on, and create, any kind of alternative to markets for corporations.
And not even providing stable and higher prices for basic crops to put more money in the hands of peasant producers.
Well, you see, this has been tried. This has been tried, and it has two basic problems. One is a problem of distribution in the sense of middlemen. How does it come from the peasant to the cities, and how many middlemen are involved and so on. And that the poorer the areas is, the worse the problem is. If you study, for example, Jharkhand, since we're talking specifically Orissa, these are the poorer the area is, the worse is the middleman problem. And there is another problem, and which is connected with, you see, stable prices and so on. It is like land compensation. You can only give it to people who are not the poorest in the villages. I mean, they're very poor, but the poorest are the landless, And stable prices is important for them, but stable wage is equally important for them.
Well, thank you very much, Amit Bhaduri, for joining us here, and congratulations on your Leontief Prize.
Thank you very much for giving it to me.